How do I, 22F, prove my innocence to my ex, 21M? Hello. I, 22-year-old female, was in an almost 2-year relationship with my ex-boyfriend, 21-year-old male, until about a week ago. Within a matter of days, our seemingly healthy and happy relationship came to an end. This all began around November 2024. One day, my then-boyfriend, I will refer to him as Jason, told me he needed to share something important. Apparently, he had been experiencing some symptoms consistent with a urinary tract infection or sexually transmitted infection for approximately a month and had not informed me. Although I was initially upset, I chose to give him the benefit of the doubt since it can be an embarrassing situation. I urged him to get it checked out right away, and he assured me he would do so the following week. Weeks turned into months, and finally, in January 2025, he attended a medical appointment. From what I can gather, he was tested and found to be positive for chlamydia. He messaged me immediately to relay the news. Understandably, he was distressed and questioning my fidelity, insisting that he would never betray me. I maintained my innocence and insisted that I had never cheated, which is true. For context, in December 2023, I underwent testing for chlamydia and received negative results. I had a yeast infection and wanted to ensure everything was in order. In fact, I tested negative for all sexually transmitted infections and diseases. Given this information, it follows that I did not introduce any infections or diseases into the relationship. Therefore, it stands to reason that Jason must have contracted chlamydia prior to our being together. I never brought up that we only ceased using condoms a couple of months before he claimed he started experiencing symptoms. It was unwise to stop using protection, yet it holds significance because he appeared to be asymptomatic up until that point. I do not wish to speak negatively about Jason's family and parents. They are incredibly loving and care about him deeply. I have always admired him and his family. They seem almost picture perfect at times. When they discovered this situation, I can only assume they were furious. He mentioned to me multiple times that he has never shared details about his sexual experiences with them. So as far as I am aware, they do not know that he was intimate with anyone before me. He tells me they believe I did not cheat, but I also suspect they either doubt this or think that I was the one who brought the chlamydia into the relationship. For more context regarding his parents, they have installed Life 360 on his phone. This is an application that tracks your location and sometimes even your messages or speed while driving. As a 21-year-old man, he receives calls and texts from his mom asking about his whereabouts. Moreover, he has a curfew. While I understand, to some extent, the need for parental oversight regarding his location and setting a curfew since he still lives at home, it strikes me as peculiar because I enjoy a lot of freedom, and I find the situation somewhat controlling. A few days after he learned about the chlamydia, January 2025, he indicated he wanted to have a discussion. He showed up at my house, and we spoke in his car in my driveway. He began by stating that we were no longer the same people we were when we first started dating, claiming it was not me, but him, as if it were a case of right person, wrong time. I found this assertion puzzling. Yes, we had recently had a couple of arguments, but I believed that experiencing conflict is a normal part of any relationship. In my opinion, if you encounter disagreements, the best approach is to resolve them, demonstrating that you care enough about the other person to make it work, especially when you express a desire to be with them for the long term. He then added something truly disheartening. Apparently, he was no longer permitted at my house or my dorm room at college. He did not elaborate, and honestly, I was too distraught to inquire further. I returned inside, got tested positive for chlamydia, and attempted to come to terms with the fact that I had been broken up with. I infer that he used the excuse of our arguments as a rationale for ending the relationship due to the chlamydia situation. Although this is merely speculation, I cannot say for certain. He has always refrained from involving his parents and never speaks ill of them, so I simply do not know how they feel or what has been discussed. The last I heard from him, he expressed a desire to talk next week when we return to campus and mentioned that he truly just needs some time to himself. This leads me to believe that having a discussion in private would be easier since his parents wouldn't be able to see if we were at my house or my dorm. Still, I feel like I might be imagining the worst-case scenario. I have thought a lot about this situation and have received several opinions from a select few close friends. I have only shared the chlamydia issue with very close individuals due to its personal nature. I recognize that it is ultimately his choice, but I am at a loss for how to prove my innocence or rebuild his trust. He asserts that he believes me, yet, my relationship with him and his parents feels irreparably damaged. They will likely never view me the same way again. How can I remedy this situation if there is even a possibility of doing so? I have been in other relationships before, but none have compared to how special this one felt. He is my best friend, my favorite person, and someone I imagined having in my life indefinitely. Now I feel like my reputation is tarnished, and I'll never be able to mend it. At this point, it seems I should resign myself to the fact that there may be no way to rectify this. It's frustrating because neither of us did anything wrong. He claims we have exhausted every avenue, but I do not concur. I believed we could work through this. I just feel hopeless now. I have lost my world. Story 2. I, 20M, don't trust my girlfriend, 20F. What can I do for our relationship, whether continued or ended? I am a 20-year-old male and have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, who is 20 years old, for slightly over 2 years. When we initially met, I exhibited many typical loser traits. I was not fond of conversing with others, had never dated, kissed, or engaged in any similar activities, among numerous other characteristics. My beliefs at the time were also quite conservative due to my family's Mormon upbringing. I held the belief in a single partner, abstaining from sexual relations until marriage, and avoiding drugs and alcohol, among other things. In contrast, she was a very charming individual, easily engaging in conversations with anyone and making all the social interactions I struggled with seem effortless. We met through our workplace, and some of our early discussions centered on her father and the poor relationship she had with him. She also shared stories about a boy she used to know, whom we will refer to as Jay, with whom she had a complicated relationship. She repeatedly assured me that throughout her history of boyfriends and conversations with various guys prior to me, she had never been intimate with a man. The only time she had engaged in sexual relations was with her 2 female best friends, which is a separate issue. She made it clear that she reserved the phrase, "I love you," in a non-platonic sense for the individual she intended to share her life with and had never expressed it before. This was very appealing to me, as I held similar values regarding significant commitments being reserved for someone I wished to spend my life with. All of her friends resided in her home state, which she had left to attend college. We began dating fairly quickly after our first meeting, and the relationship progressed rapidly. Following a series of challenges in our personal lives, we ended up moving in together in a different city within 6 months of beginning our relationship. At this point, we were committed to one another, living in an apartment together, sharing expenses, and managing our lives jointly. Fast forward to this past December. I was retrieving her phone for her from another room where it was charging, and when I picked it up, I noticed a text from Jay. I did not read it, but I was puzzled since she had previously indicated that she no longer wished to maintain contact with him. When I returned her phone, I inquired about her communication with Jay. She informed me that she needed some form of closure regarding him and that I was welcome to read the messages if I desired. I did read them, and they appeared conversational and casual, lacking any indication of a specific purpose, especially not closure. I kept this in mind and chose to move forward, not wanting to exert control over her. A little later that month, we were preparing for a trip back to her hometown, which we had done numerous times before. However, this time she requested permission to see Jay, again citing the need for closure. Reluctantly, after some questioning, I acquiesced, not wanting to exert control over her. We were quite busy visiting her family and friends, and to ensure I did not miss any interactions, she ultimately met with Jay late at night, around 2 a.m. She returned home around 4 a.m. I expressed my deep discomfort with her actions and conveyed my unhappiness. She reassured me that nothing concerning would transpire. She maintained distance, and there were other individuals present, among other reassurances. Then, she informed me that she wished to see him once more. Again, with great reluctance, I consented. This time, she departed at midnight and did not return until 5 a.m. By then, my mental state was deteriorating, and I was extremely anxious about the possibility of her infidelity. Regrettably, after her return home that night, I went through her phone. I discovered that she had communicated with her friends about being intimate with Jay multiple times. Furthermore, I encountered numerous instances of her expressing, "I love you," to former boyfriends and referencing sexual encounters with individuals I had never even heard of. When she woke up, I confronted her with the evidence I had found. Astonishingly, she denied everything. She offered implausible explanations for the most glaringly obvious evidence that could exist. Eventually, she admitted to having been intimate with Jay. Naturally, I was devastated. When I questioned her about the other situations, she denied them all except the encounter with Jay. She also rationalized her deception by claiming I would not have wanted her had she been honest. She suggested that due to my values, it was unlikely I would have pursued a relationship with her had she not lied. Now, I have been contemplating this situation extensively, and while I have feelings for her, I find it difficult to trust her again. Moreover, every other issue about which I had previous uncertainty, especially concerning her meetings with Jay, now carries a significant shadow of doubt, leaving me feeling that I will never receive clear answers regarding them. I wonder if it is fair to her for me to harbor this underlying distrust, which, I am sure, will affect other aspects of our lives should we choose to remain together. At the same time, I do not believe it is fair to me, as I cannot trust my partner, and anything she says is met with reasonable skepticism of being untruthful. What do you think? What options do I have to either continue this relationship or end it with minimal suffering? In summary, when my girlfriend and I initially met, she claimed to have prior partners, but argued that none were serious enough for her to express love or engage in sexual relations. As time passed, she reconnected with a former partner, and I discovered that she had misled me about being intimate with him before our relationship, as well as having sexual relations and expressing love to other partners. Story 3. For Muslims only, 22F and 21M. Effects of an inappropriate relationship? I met my former husband when I was 22, and he was 21. We connected through social media. At that time, I was not searching for anything romantic as I had recently ended another relationship, making me quite vulnerable. I initially interacted with him as a friend, but he began to express romantic interest in me. I felt the same way because we shared many common interests. After 2 weeks of conversation, he confessed that he liked me and had already informed his parents about his feelings. Both of us were not in a position to marry, and I was not emotionally prepared for it. During this period, I had made a commitment to avoid any form of inappropriate relationship until marriage. I discussed this with him and suggested that we stop communicating, believing that if we were meant to be together in the future, it would happen. He argued and insisted, but eventually, he accepted my decision. About a month later, he reached out again, stating that he realized he was mistaken and that we could simply be friends until we were ready for something serious. We communicated daily through texts and calls, discussing everyday topics, and we discovered many shared hobbies and beliefs. Unfortunately, our feelings for each other deepened without us explicitly acknowledging it. Despite living in different states, he requested to visit me as a friend, and I agreed. On our first meeting, he brought me numerous gifts and professed his love for me. He was genuinely serious about our connection. This continued for a year while I completed my studies, and we met a total of 4 or 5 times. Regrettably, we engaged in inappropriate behaviors during this time, which affected us significantly. At the end of that year, he came to propose, and we began preparations for our wedding. I still needed to complete my internship, so I chose his city for this purpose, as that was where I planned to relocate after marriage. However, while we were engaged, we indulged in many inappropriate activities. It began with him visiting me. I requested him not to do so to avoid transgressions, but he insisted because I lived alone and he wanted to keep me company. This led to kissing, and then we engaged in actions meant solely for married couples. Although we never had actual intercourse, we still committed other actions that were equally wrong. We both knew it was inappropriate. Every time he visited my apartment, he would message me to pray 2 units of prayer and seek forgiveness after leaving. Over time, this became more frequent, and our feelings of guilt diminished. I recall a moment when he suggested we engage in oral intimacy, which made me realize we had crossed a line. I told him to wait until marriage for that, and he agreed. Despite this, we continued other actions, and he would always say, "This is the last time," even when I refused. It may sound bad, but I allowed it. I suppose I wasn't strong enough to assert myself firmly. He also came from a moderately religious family and knew we were not supposed to act this way. However, we were naive, thinking that with our wedding so close, nothing could go wrong. Let me add that everything was going well for us. We were both easygoing, understanding, loving, and caring. Our families got along wonderfully, and we had no significant issues. It felt like the perfect relationship I had always desired. Eventually, we married mid-year, and that is when things began to decline. I became a complete nightmare. Minor issues began to irritate me, and I disrespected him, which led to him disrespecting me in return. I was no longer easygoing. I raised my voice, and our relationship was far from peaceful. I even grew demanding about material possessions, which was strange since I had always promised myself I wouldn't behave this way towards my husband. Yet here I was, acting this way towards my husband, who already bore other financial responsibilities. I feel like he remained the same but grew increasingly angry and frustrated with me, which led him to make poor choices as well. My behavior eventually reached a point where we both began to be physically and emotionally abusive toward one another. Our families and an imam became involved. We made attempts to resolve our issues, but nothing improved. Ultimately, we divorced. It was the most heartbreaking experience I have ever endured, and I still grapple with it. I am aware that Allah is most merciful and forgives those who repent, which we did on our wedding night together. However, I personally reflected on this only after the divorce, concluding that perhaps our repentance was not sincere enough. I also realized that to have a blessed marriage, we should have severed all contact for an extended period, engaging in sincere repentance during that time before marrying again if we still desired it. Is this true? I also recognize that we must take responsibility for our actions, which I have done and continue to do. I simply cannot comprehend how I failed to realize how wrongful my behavior was during the marriage. I made numerous attempts to address our issues just before the divorce, but I was overwhelmed by emotional distress, resentment, and anger within the marriage. Only after the divorce did my eyes open. It is not to say that my former husband was blameless, but most of our conflicts and arguments originated from me. Now I carry immense regret, believing I have lost the man of my dreams and a relationship that could have been extraordinary. I also understand that this could have been a test, and perhaps Allah SWT will bless me with someone better. Yet I feel he was the perfect person for me, and everything has been ruined. No one has ever made me as happy as he did, and no one went out of their way to bring me joy like he did. It has been months, and I am struggling to move past it. I am seeking some unbiased opinions and advice on this situation. Thank you. Story 4. M22, confused about relationship status, with best friend F25. I would like to commence this advice request column by first stating that I do not wish to distort the data or perception by implying that I am right or that she is right. I will present the facts as they are, as well as both of our perceptions. Let's refer to my friend as P. We have been friends for 2 years now, since the beginning of college. It is a master's program, and for privacy reasons, I prefer not to mention the location, but it is somewhere in Asia. Initially, I had feelings for her. She discovered this, and we engaged in a series of discussions, arguments, and conversations about how she is older and how her family would not accept me due to my perceived immaturity. She mentioned that she would likely marry someone chosen by her parents once she completes this course. Despite this, we continued to spend time together. Following a fallout with the initial friend group we belonged to, which was due to related matters, it became just the 3 of us, P, another guy named X, and myself. We developed a close bond, with P viewing X, a 25-year-old male, as ideal husband material. Sadly, he presented himself as a gentleman, but turned out to be a predatory serial dater who was not a true friend, which devastated her. Throughout 2024, I supported her through this fallout, from her difficulty in accepting his true nature to his decision to date her roommate, to dealing with her toxic roommate situation. I took her out until curfew almost every day to prevent her from feeling triggered. During that period, we took care of each other in a manner akin to a couple, but without the labels and exclusive behaviors. The reason I share this context is that our closeness meant a lot, especially following the fallout involving the three of us, P, X, and myself, and she knew that I had feelings for her. The issue was that she never wanted to define our relationship as romantic, even though we engaged in nearly all activities that couples do, aside from sexual intercourse. At one point, we almost reached third base, but she remained uncertain and did not wish to commit to me. Now that we are nearing the end of our course, just a few months left before we separate to work in different places, I have been reflecting on the numerous conflicts we have had, primarily stemming from her feeling that I am not present for her and haven't changed to meet her needs. What this means is that, throughout the friendship, she persistently asked me about my previous relationship, continually inquiring and then criticizing me for being intimate with my ex. In summary, my ex was merely a fling. I did not intend for it to progress. We argued many times about how I could have dated my ex while professing love for P. Moreover, she had issues with all my friends except the male ones. I unfriended and distanced myself from many of them because she tended to scrutinize my chats randomly and question my relationships with them. My female friends were not particularly close, just acquaintance level with fleeting flirtations, but since I was involved with P, even as just a friend, I initially reduced my contact and eventually removed them entirely. P also expressed frustration when I did not answer calls. I often explained that if I did not answer, it was usually because I was in the bathroom or asleep. This led to countless disputes. To complicate matters, my building has poor network coverage, so when she attempted to call, it frequently showed as call failed. This resulted in her experiencing significant anger towards me. P is also uncomfortable when I inquire if she is all right or if I need to assist her with something, and she reacts negatively if I give her space. I have resorted to keeping my phone visible at all times so I can reply immediately to her notifications. I have even adjusted my sleep schedule to align with hers, so I can work or relax only after ensuring she is asleep. There are numerous issues like this, and I am not blameless either. I have been working through my own struggles with emotional regulation, and at present, I find myself feeling quite detached. I have not made any attempts to deviate from the established patterns and behaviors that make her happy. I strive to avoid arguments because when they occur, things can get quite disrespectful on her part. However, she tends to cool down quickly, often within a day, and things return to normal, perpetuating the cycle. My best friend from school, whom I have recently confided in about this, advised me that I am unnecessarily doing all of this for P since we will not end up together. Others from my past before my master's program have commented that I used to have a spark that seems lost now, and they believe I am overly concerned. I have contemplated therapy after all this, or picking up smoking or drinking, as I have been under immense stress since this situation began. Many days, I feel like a shell of my former self. I no longer recognize who I am. I used to be a cheerful, intelligent, and capable person, but I now feel like my mind has faltered in many aspects, leaving me in a perpetual state of exhaustion. Furthermore, my career dissatisfaction adds to my downward spiral. I am not a bad person. I am simply an average 22-year-old trying to understand my situation. While I acknowledge my mistakes, I wonder why she continuously changes the expectations for each issue we encounter. In any case, I would appreciate your thoughts on this matter and what I should do next. Among all the people in my life, she is the most genuine, compassionate, and understanding individual. However, there are downsides to everything, and I truly need guidance on how to proceed. Should I strive to win her over, or is it best to cut my losses and attempt to move on? I find myself confused about what to ask as well. Story 5. My girlfriend, 19F, hesitated in picking me, 19F. Okay, so my girlfriend and I started dating about a year ago, and roughly 4 months ago, she began expressing interest in another boy who confessed to her first. I, feeling insecure, just tried to be supportive. I often told her things like, "You should choose him," or "I don't deserve you," reflecting my internal struggle, which stemmed from being oblivious to her red flags in this being my first genuine relationship. I thought she might appreciate my support, even though I originally overlooked many issues. She did comment on my flaws, pointing out that I struggled to read emotions and wasn't spending enough time with her. However, I made numerous changes to be what I thought she wanted. I became more energetic in an effort to be her ideal partner. It crushed my already fragile self-esteem to hear her criticize me. Regarding our time together, I even set alarms to check if she messaged me, as she would become upset if I didn't reply within an hour, which I found really frustrating. Fast forward 2 months. I was out of school for about a week due to a throat infection, and out of the blue, I received a text from my girlfriend saying, "Hey, I think we should take a break because another girl confessed to me, and I'm feeling confused about both of you." I was completely worn out at that point and initially thought she was joking, but when she affirmed it was serious, I respected her choice. The following day, however, we played games all day together, and then she reiterated her desire for a break. On the next day, she told me, "I love you," and I reciprocated to avoid awkwardness. But she insisted I send her a voice message because she didn't believe me. I complied, and then the following day she suggested a break until Wednesday. At that point, I had had enough. While I was angry, I texted her suggesting we try it for 2 weeks instead, wanting to see how she would react if I switched the scenario. When I said, "I'm having the same issue," she became very upset. "Isn't that a bit hypocritical?" This incident made me start noticing her red flags more clearly. During our break, my friends informed me of things I had missed, one being that she reached out to my best friend to essentially ask her to keep her distance from me, which was alarming. That explained some of her distant behavior, and while I understand people can be jealous, I found it frustrating that she would ask my friend to back off, especially since she had developed feelings for 2 other guys herself. I was really angry at her toxic behavior, so I confronted her with a lengthy message calling out her actions. A week later, we attempted to have an honest conversation, and she opened with, "It's my time of the month and I'm feeling confused," a phrase I had become accustomed to hearing during our disagreements. At that time, I was still fond of her, so I didn't think much of it. I asked her if that would always be the case during this time, and she replied, "If I can control myself, no," which made me realize deep down that I needed to end the relationship, and we did so on New Year's. I burned the gift she gave me, and she reacted, saying I made her cry, asserting that the breakup was unnecessary. There was back and forth between us until she told me not to contact her anymore, and I respected that and decided to back off. 2 weeks later, we started communicating again. I missed her. After all, we had been together for a year, and I truly believed she was my first love and best friend. It was painful that things didn't work out. Recently, she suggested another honest conversation, and I agreed. However, during this discussion, she minimized her actions while I stood up for myself, saying, "Why are you pretending you didn't do anything? Are we supposed to forget your actions?" She started fake crying, a tactic she often used during serious discussions whenever I made a valid point. One of my frustrations was her inability to acknowledge when she was wrong. She claimed I was sending mixed signals and ignoring her, but I viewed our interactions as friendly, just like with my other friends. Furthermore, how could she assume the right to say such things after her own actions? She even had the nerve to accuse me of failing to keep my promises, which left me utterly shocked. I was taken aback and gestured that it wasn't fair to expect me to have anticipated she would develop feelings for others before I made those promises to her. Then, out of nowhere, she stated, "I feel like you are closer to your other friends," which made me question why that might be the case. When I mentioned treating her like a friend, she replied, "Okay, that stings." I had clearly stated that we should restart as if we were strangers, so I was puzzled by her insistence on wanting another chance when this was already her 5th opportunity. Moreover, she mentioned she only felt bad for the other boy, leaving me wondering why she didn't express any sympathy for me, the person she was dating. We are set to talk again next week, as she has been cold towards me since I questioned her behavior regarding our past. I apologize if this is somewhat disorganized. I am just feeling incredibly frustrated and unsure of how to proceed. I had already purchased her Valentine's Day gifts around 5 months ago, which included plushies, a necklace, her favorite candy, snacks, and a matching onesie. I crafted what resembles a Pinterest-worthy Valentine's Day Goodie bag, because when I love someone, I love deeply, and I wanted to give her these tokens since we were communicating. However, I fear that calling out her behavior during our conversation may jeopardize our ability to talk again, and I do not want to lose my best friend a second time. Should I address her toxicity directly or wait until after Valentine's Day?